motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. It would seem there's been an opponent switch for Dina Thorsland for her upcoming comeback fight in Denmark at the end of this month, where initially she was going to be facing Brazil's own Lila Furtado at a contracted weight of 126 pounds. She will now be facing Spain's own Almudena Alvarez for the WBC interim world featherweight title. Apparently there was a disagreement over the contract, which is open to interpretation, though all things considered, it's probably better that Dina Thorsland not fight someone as rough and rugged as Lila Furtado in what would be her very first fight in over a year. Dina Thorsland, 32 years old, to Almudena Alvarez, who's 43. Dina Thorsland, who sports an unblemished record of 23 wins with no losses and no draws, 9 knockouts, having been a champion at 122 and a champion at 118. She's looking to get her alphabet titles back, and this fight, this is just an appetizer. Preliminary reports indicate that they've already got a fight date set for Dina Thorsland to challenge Shernika Johnson at bantamweight for all the marbles, all the belts. What is interesting is that the fight that she's about to have at the end of this month is for a WBC interim featherweight title. If it's Dina's goal to drop back down to 118, what does she need with an interim title at 126? Maybe it's just something that she can keep in her back pocket, irrespective of what happens with Shernika Johnson or what doesn't. If she wins, if she loses, if the fight doesn't happen, she'll have that WBC interim title to fall back on. That's just me bouncing ideas around. Her opponent, Almudena Alvarez, sports professional record of 7 wins with 3 losses and no draws, 2 recorded knockouts, having never been knocked out in 10 professional bouts, coming right off a loss to former champion Sigolene Lafarve in November of last year when she fought 2 times. Her other 2 losses are to the same woman, Eva Contos, a journeywoman with losses in the double digits. And so, while I've never seen Almudena in action, you do get the impression that this is a journeywoman kind of opponent, a gatekeeper, as opposed to Lila Furtado, who still is more of a contender. Perhaps it's a blessing in disguise that things with Lila didn't work out, because Lila would have presented a tougher challenge, I think, than Almudena is about to. If the goal is to make it to a Shernika Johnson fight in the spring, you don't want to get too dinged up in a comeback fight. I still feel that Dina Thorsland is the very best bantamweight in the world until further notice, but the fight that she was about to have with Lila wasn't at bantamweight. It was at feather, and given how long she's been out, yeah, I had my reservations. I was curious to see how Dina would handle that assignment. As it happens, she'll be facing Almudena instead, who I'm a bit more confident she can handle and perhaps stop. Set to go down in Denmark on the undercard of Bank versus Skull, broadcasted in this part of the world via DAZN, which you'll be able to watch that Saturday afternoon. In men's lightweight news, ahead of this weekend's lightweight title fight, Andy Cruz has impressed stablemate Jaron Ennis since day one. If you take a look at Andy Cruz's resume, you might find it confusing that he's competing for a world title in his next fight. The 30-year-old Cuban has only 6 pro bouts under his belt and hasn't fought anyone of note. However, he had the kind of amateur career that leads to early opportunities, like what we saw with Vasyl Lomachenko, Katie Taylor, Clarissa Shields, you know the drill. With a reported 140 wins against 8 single-digit defeats and a gold medal in the 2020 Olympics, Cruz is trained by Derek Ennis, whose son, Jaron Ennis, is one of the best in the business. The younger Ennis told Matchroom Boxing that he was taken aback the first time he saw Cruz up close. The first time I saw him in here sparring, I'm like, he's gonna be a nasty pro, a nasty world champion, Ennis said. Cruz will first have to get through IBF lightweight champion Raymond Muratalla this weekend at the Fontainebleau in Las Vegas on DAZN to fulfill Ennis's prophecy. Muratalla will be defending his strap for the first time since he was elevated from interim to full champion last June. Cruz is coming off a dominant win over Hironori Mishiro in June, stopping him in 5 rounds. He's favored to beat Muratalla in spite of his lack of pro experience, which Jaron Ennis doesn't believe will be a factor. Andy's been ready for a title shot, Ennis said. He's got a lot of amateur experience, and he knows how to carry himself. Everything he did in the amateurs carried over to the pros. He can achieve whatever he wants to achieve in the sport. It's his mind, his IQ. He's got a great mind and a great IQ. I feel so inclined to agree. After having seen all 6 of Andy's fights as a professional, I think he can beat Raymond Muratalla. Maybe if it were somebody else. Somebody who's been looking better than Raymond. But I noticed in Raymond's last 2 or 3 fights, he hasn't looked that dynamic a boxer. He looked bang average with Tevin Farmer, average again with Jesus Campos, and average still more recently with Zaur Abdullaev. And what else? It looks like they've been trying to make Raymond more of a boxer and more of a thinker. I noticed that in his last fight. He wasn't really hitting the gas. Nope. Took a measured approach with Zaur Abdullaev. Won a decision, went the distance with him, but this is the same Zaur Abdullaev that Devin Haney stopped in 4 rounds, so that Raymond couldn't stop him. It's not good, because I think that Raymond's best bet of winning the fight against Andy is to hit the gas, is to put pressure on him and push the pace to a pace that he's not used to. It's a guy with only 6 fights. So Raymond Muratalla's 23. He's got a lot more fights than Andy, a lot more rounds than Andy. But if you can't push the pace and force a stoppage with an Abdullaev, I don't trust that you can do that with an Andy Cruz. Standout amateur and Olympic gold medalist, cornered by Bozy Ennis, one of the best trainers in the industry right now. I can't trust Raymond Muratalla to put the pressure on Andy, and I already don't think he can win a chess match against Andy. You're not going to outthink this guy. Your best bet is to make it rough and tumble, make it physical. I'm convinced Raymond can do that. Not looking bang average with Tevin Farmer, an average still in the subsequent 2 fights that followed. Raymond Muratalla normally fights on the top-ranked side of things. Top rank, who we all know are between broadcasters right now, and so this lightweight contest is taking place on the Matchroom and DAZN side of things. I vaguely recall hearing in the build-up that this might be Raymond Muratalla's final fight as a lightweight, and afterwards he would be moving up. Who said that? Robert Garcia, the man who trains him. Now, it could be that after all this time, Raymond Muratalla has grown tight at the weight and he's outgrown the division, or it could be they're anticipating a loss. They don't really like their chances, and so they know they're going to lose, and they plan on moving up afterwards. I believe Andy Cruz will become the new IBF champion on Saturday night. Andy Cruz of Cuba. Sport of boxing has seen its fair share of standout amateurs from the island of Cuba, but how many of them actually went on to become stars and big box office attractions? You think Andy can? We've seen Guillermo Regandiao, Arislandi Lara, very accomplished fighters in their own right. We've seen Uniel Dorticos, David Morel, Ioannis Tellez, the new kid, Oslis Iglesias. Good number of Cuban fighters in the sport of boxing, none of which ever became a big box office attraction. And so, what are the odds that Matchroom can promote Andy Cruz as such to become one of the somebodies? Not just a formidable fighter, and not just a champion among champions, but an actual draw. Not just the guy with a belt. Because a lot of guys got belts. The lay of the land at 135 right now, well, it looks like Floyd Schofield is set to become WBA champion. William Zepeda looks to become WBC champion. This weekend, Andy will pick up the IBF, and Abdullah Mason already has the WBO. How many of those fights do you think Andy can get? And of the fights that he can get, how many do you think he can win? I think he could win a fight theoretically against Floyd Schofield, who's still young, still green. That is, if he could get the fight with Floyd Schofield. Floyd has already developed a reputation as a bit of a ducker, pulling out of the Ashton Silva fight, the Shakur Stevenson fight, and pricing himself out of the Abdullah Mason fight. If Andy could get him in the ring, I think Andy would beat him. The problem is, I don't think Andy can get him in the ring. William Zepeda looks to be in line to become WBC champion, and I don't know that Andy can win that one. I think that's a tougher fight than the Floyd Schofield fight would be, because William Zepeda is a punching machine. He's a pressure guy that throws punches and bunches every minute of every round. The kind of guy who's easy to understand outwardly, but in the ring is very difficult to work around. The pace that he sets for a fight is such
that he could cause an otherwise educated and crafty boxer to start to unravel. And given that Andy Cruz only has 6 fights,
It's not a foregone conclusion that he beats William Zepeda. It's not a foregone conclusion that he beats Abdullah Mason either, who I think is one of the more talented youngsters America has produced.
natural ability and talent like Andy Cruz, but also youth, because he's a lot younger than Andy Cruz.
More experienced in a manner of speaking, Abdullah Mason has more fights and thus more rounds in the bank than Andy Cruz. So he's got talent like Andy, but all the experience that Andy doesn't have. Slim pickings at 135 pounds for the unbeaten Cuban, who I anticipate will become a champion this weekend, but it only gets harder after that.
We'll see what Eddie Hearn and Matchroom can do for him.
Eddie Hearn, who says Tyson Fury is still in his prime and he's happy to see him return to boxing. Eddie Hearn and Tyson Fury haven't always been best friends or even gotten on well in public, but Hearn says he's glad to see Fury break his retirement and plan a return to the ring. Hearn told Sky Sports that Fury is brilliant for boxing and that he's still in his prime. He's inspiring me with his training. I look at it, I go, good on you. We've had a lot to say over the years, but I love the fact that he's back in boxing. I think he's an incredible fighter. I think he's brilliant for the game, and he can be involved in some huge fights. And by the way, he's still in his prime. He lost 2 very close fights to Alexander Usyk. It's not like, oh, he's finished now. The 37-year-old Fury hasn't fought since December of 2024, when he did lose a second close bout with Alexander Usyk, their first having come 7 months prior. Fury's last win was a staggeringly poor performance, however you want to slice it, against Francis Ngannou in October of 2023, more than 2 years ago. Realistically, and not speaking as a promoter who stands to potentially make some money with Fury, he probably isn't quite in his prime still, but the real point Hearn is making is that Fury, as we last saw him, remains an elite-level heavyweight, which is true. When he last fought against Usyk, it's hard to say that he wasn't still second-best heavyweight in the world.
That is according to the author of this article, who I do agree with. Fury's not in his prime, not at 37, and not coming off of 2 back-to-back losses.
But Fury doesn't need to be in his prime to still be a valuable asset to the sport of boxing and a bankable commodity who, when you match him properly, can sell some tickets
And win some fights.
which is saying a lot because I'm no supporter of Tyson Fury. I'm no fan of Tyson Fury, but objectively speaking, I know that his fans exist. I know that they're still out there, and he, at least on paper, only lost to one guy, albeit 2 times.
Still, just one guy. Alexander Usyk. Same guy that beat AJ, same guy that beat Daniel.
In hindsight, there's no shame in Fury losing to that fighter, and losing to that fighter doesn't mean it's the end of the road for Tyson Fury, who, up until this point, was thought to be going into an all-British shootout with his domestic rival, Anthony Joshua, up until the point Anthony got into that tragic car accident.
Lost 2 of his buddies. I thought he was going to retire at first.
But it's looking like he might linger, like he might stick around. Alexander Usyk recently spoke with Anthony, and he said, I've spoken with him. I've heard a desire to continue in his voice, for the friends he lost and for the chance to live what the Lord gave him.
Eddie Hearn recently stated, great to catch up with Anthony Joshua today. His resilience and strength is inspiring. The loss is heavy, and he will take his time to get back on track, but said he is truly grateful for all of the support and the love shown for Lats and Cena.
So the original plan before that accident derailed everything was for Anthony to fight next month against an opponent that had yet to be announced. Then Tyson Fury would presumably go into his tune-up fight sometime in April. It doesn't look like Anthony wants to retire. It looks like he wants to fight on, and maybe he will over the summer months in time to make it to a fall or winter showdown with Tyson Fury. Because if Tyson and Anthony are still hanging around, it's got to be to fight each other.
In the immediate aftermath of that tragic accident, Fabio Wardley became the front runner to fight Tyson Fury. And that fight is not off the table either. The way it could happen, Anthony has a tune-up fight, Tyson Fury has a tune-up fight, they then fight each other, and maybe the winner fights Flavio. in a passing of the torch fight?
It could happen that way. Or it could happen to where Fury has a tune-up, then fights Fabio in the time it's still taking Anthony to come back to boxing. Either way, I think those three names are tied to each other. We're seeing the first images of Tyson Fury in camp, mounting his comeback. He brought the heavy-handed Chinese prospect Yang to Thailand for camp.
Is he training in Thailand?
Tyson Fury has shared a picture from his Thailand training camp alongside Chinese heavyweight Yi Hang Yang. The 21-year-old has stopped 3 of his last 4 opponents inside the first round. Fury said news is imminent on his return to the ring.
I, like Eddie Hearn, am a little bit glad to see Tyson Fury is back because he still is a bankable commodity, whether you like him or not, or his style of fighting, or his candor.
He's still a big personality in the sport and still a bankable asset. You can still put him in some major fights, some big ones. The Fabio Wardley fight would be a big fight. Big fight in the UK. The Anthony Joshua fight, that showdown would be even bigger. So there's still work needs doing for Tyson Fury. There are still big fights to make.
Big money.
Even though I've never really been a big fan of this guy, I have to admit, I'm glad to see he's back.